Andra, congratulations for an awesome show. It's
Thank
been
you.
a real pleasure to have you here tonight for the first time.
Thank you. It's been an honor to be here.
So when did music become your passion?
Goodness. It's hard to really say one specific date. I feel like my entire life I've sort of been inundated with music. My parents both love music. My father loved jazz and he loved R&B, Motown, Chess and Stax records. And my mother loved, Fleetwood Mac and the Carpenters and Journey. And so, I've always sort of been around music and been inundated with music. And so it just was kind of a natural thing for me to get into it. I went to performance arts school as well. So it's always been my life.
But when did you discover that voice?
I don't know. Maybe I always knew I could sing. I think probably when I was around maybe 8 or 9 years old, I think that I could sing, or that I had some type of voice or some sound. And I started singing in church, like a lot of people. But it's funny because people are always like, oh yeah, gospel. And I was like, nope, we were singing just contemporary Christian little praise band guitar songs, and then I went to a performance arts school too and started auditioning for shows. And that's when I discovered voices like Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald and Nina Simone. And there was something so different about their texture, the texture of their voice and their presence. And so that drew me in, and I just knew, it's like, okay, this stuff, I have to really, really, really do this. When I look at Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald, Nina Simone, like those women are the reason I sing, sing what I sing. But my influences, like I said, are everywhere, from, Etta James, Aretha, to Janis Joplin, to, on down to Lauryn Hill and Erykah Badu. And, and so it just, I just love voices. I love unique voices. I love identifiable voices, and so, and women who sing for a reason and who make a stand, no matter what their circumstances are, no matter what people say around them. So it's just, I don't know. I like to say I was sort of established, in the 50s, and then drug me through the decades. I picked up a couple of things on the way, and then boom, here I am. I started writing early on. When I graduated high school is really when I was like, okay, I'm pursuing this more, and I'm finding studios and producers. And so I had to write because no one was around to write for me, So it was just sort of out of necessity. But it wasn't because I was like, I loved it, It wasn't until later, going through relationship woes. I was in a relationship for a long time with someone who I was unfaithful to, and then I ended up getting my heart broken by someone else. And it was sort of that whole experience, and then pursuing music, a relationship, my career, sort of for selfish reasons, kind of left me empty and broken. And so when I finally got to a point of sort of surrender, that's when I really was like, oh, there's a story here, So what may have seemed like a really challenging time in my life, and in someone else's life as well, it was hard, but it really yielded a story, something to be able to talk about, and something that people can relate to and say, hey, there's hope. You know what I mean? There is, as cliche as it sounds, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And so I'm appreciative for that. It was challenging, I think. I think more than anything, it was just scary, the idea of putting myself out there like that and being so vulnerable and so open about my mistakes and, just the things that I'd done. Most of the time, I think when you hear an album, people are usually speaking from the perspective of having their heart broken. And so it's to put myself out there as sort of the perpetrator of heartbreak on someone else it was a scary thing to do. But, I had gotten to a point in my life and in my faith, really, that I just don't want to hide anymore. And I don't want to feel like something's being held over my head, or, I'm scared that something might get out. And honestly, it became much more of a cathartic process than anything else. It was a purging, and now seeing and meeting people who have their own struggles and their own experiences and are saying, hey, this song really resonates with me, or this one resonates. I feel just kind of fulfilled, like, okay, I reminded that here for a reason. And so when you sort of take the element away that's like, I need to look good and be famous, then you're free. And that's how I feel. When we're performing live, I always say it's a conversation, right? Because I always think to myself, if you are up here and you are vulnerable with your audience, not just in your music, but in slip-ups and mishaps that happen on stage, you know what I mean? But you have a good time with it, you make it relatable, then it makes it less of a show and more of an experience for the people who are in the audience. And I feel like though everyone's struggle may not look the same, it is the same. We all have our issues, and we all have those things that we feel like weigh us down or those things that we struggle with. And so I think to sort of open, the performance should be a continuation of the album. It should be the point when I open up the floor to say, hey, now it's your turn to purge, and it's your turn to, you know, let yourself go. And I think on stage for me, personally, when it comes to these stories, I'm at a point now in my life when it's a little more reflective than anything else now.
I know there's a Stevie Wonder connection
Yeah.
to your story. I know it's been told in different ways. It's not like Stevie was actually in the room or at the mall
No.
when he heard you sing. But if it wasn't for him, you might not be here.
That's right.
Or where you are today.
Yes, absolutely. I it's always a surprise. It's actually a surprise for me even when I tell this story still. But Stevie Wonder is who discovered me really in the first place. And, you know, he actually introduced me even to the producer that I did the album with. So this was pre any music, anything. And actually even before my sort of revelation and point of surrender. You know, it was the first time we spoke. I went up to LA, sort of scrounged up some pennies to get up there and to sing in a strip mall in front of this storefront with just a little mic and an amp, you know. And there's a person I was working with at the time who took video of it. And they happened to find themselves in a pastry shop a few weeks later with Kai Millard, who was a great designer and was Stevie Wonder's wife at the time. And so she liked what she heard, and she said, okay, I'm going to play it for him, see what he thinks. And he liked it. She was like, he loved your voice. And so they orchestrated a call. And so I say, here I am in this tiny little apartment, you know, basically like a studio that I shared with my mom, you know, in Chula Vista in San Diego. And I'm on the phone with Stevie Wonder, and you know, it's a good thing I knew the call was coming, because I always think I would have hung up the phone, like for sure I would have hung up the phone, you know, and been like, oh yeah, this is Michael Jackson, talk to you later, goodbye. But no, so I knew it was coming, and he talked about songwriting. He said he loved my voice and talked about my approach with music, and said he wanted to do a song together, and it was just amazing. And it didn't work out at the time because, you know, it just was not in a great situation. But a year and a half later, just by grace, the two of them held on to my information, and they reached out again and said, we want to work with you. We want to connect you with a producer that we love. And that's when I was introduced to Adrian Gervitz. And then we got in and started working together.
Well, Stevie knows a good thing when he hears it. And there's a
Thank
moral
you.
in that story, too. Never pass up an opportunity, no matter how small it may seem.
Yeah, that's
Strip
right.
mall gig or wherever,
never
whatever
know.
it is.
And all of
never
it,
know.
all of it. Now I look at all of it. At the time, right, it was challenging. But now, like, printing my own CDs at Kinko's, and, you know, with the little cheap packaging, and trying to pass it out at the beach, and, you know, doing every little gig, and, you know, moving to Atlanta for a few months, see what would happen out. All of it is just stepping stones, you know, and more story. That's it.
As you know, nothing comes easy in this world. So
Nope.
you
Nothing
gotta-
worth it. Nothing worthwhile does.
That's true.